What's up guys, and welcome to the weekly Q&A. We're going to go right into questions starting with Vando Wilrisian, who asks why in the new canon we're seeing so many new different belief systems when it comes to the Force. We've got the Church of the Force, the Guardians of the Whills, now we have the Stone Power from the recent comics, of course the Jedi and the Sith, and there's more. So he's wondering what the end game might be for all these different belief systems. And I think that it has to do with the title of Episode 8, The Last Jedi. I touched on this on my speculation video when they announced the title, that I think that Rey might not be trained as a Jedi in the strictest sense. I think we're seeing all of these new ways to follow the Force because Lucasfilm wants to set up that the Jedi and the Sith aren't the only way. And we've been introduced to the Bendu, who is the one in the middle. So I think that we're going to see Rey be something new, and that's why Luke will be known as the Last Jedi. Not necessarily because he's going to die, just because he's going to start a new order. And Rey might be the first of that order. Maybe she'll be a Bendu Knight, because in the original scripts for the Star Wars way back when, the Jedi were originally called the Jedi Bendu. So that's kind of where I think they're headed with all of these different belief systems. A new comic crossover was announced this week for the Dr. Aphra and the Star Wars comics, and Daniel Charland wants to know what I think about it. Honestly, I am very excited for it. The Dr. Aphra comic has blown my expectations out of the water. When they announced it back in like October or November, I was confused as to why they chose her as a character to base a new series around of. I thought it was an odd choice, but now I see how wrong I was, because she's an archaeologist. And like every issue, we're getting a little taste of ancient Star Wars history in the new canon, which is an area that the new canon is sorely lacking in right now. And Aphra just got to like this citadel for either the Sith or the Jedi, we're not sure yet, but it's some ancient structure, and I'm incredibly excited to see what's there, what it means for the future. And it sounds like the crossover event with the Star Wars comic is going to be along those same lines. They'll be exploring an ancient location. It's all very cool, and I love the direction that they're taking that in. It's like Space Indiana Jones, except Aphra's a little more evil than Indy, but it's a very cool series, so I'm just really excited about it in general. Mark Zebro Jr. asks when we're going to get a show based around the new trilogy area, because the Clone Wars is obviously prequel era, Rebels is more or less the original trilogy, so when are we going to get stuff in the new trilogy era? I wouldn't expect anything until after Episode 9. I think Lucasfilm is going to trickle out their secrets and revelations through the films. I mean, that's where they want people to go, so they're not going to give us too much before Episode 9 comes out, I don't think. We're going to get the occasional book like Bloodline. We have the Poe Dameron comic, but for the most part, I think they're going to keep the new content relegated to the original trilogy, sometimes the prequel trilogy. I wish they'd do more in the prequel trilogy era, but for now, I think we're just going to have to be patient until after Episode 9, and then they're going to really start hitting like what happened in between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens and all kinds of stuff, but I just wouldn't expect anything to happen until then. George Taylor wants to know if there are any non-vehicle sports in the Star Wars universe, and since we just had the Super Bowl and a heartbreaking loss for the Falcons, I thought that would be an appropriate question to answer. And yes, there are quite a few. Grav Ball was the one that jumped to mind immediately because I think it's the only canon one. It's talked about in the Servants of the Empire book. There might be more canon ones, but I did write a list down of other sports because I don't have these memorized at all. But on top of Grav Ball, you can learn about Borgle Ball, Crash Ball, Hover Ball, Hut Ball, Moops Ball, Nega Ball, Phase Ball, Shock Ball, and many more. Mark Ashley asks if I think the Yuuzhan Vong or another race like them with Force immunity could ever come back into the canon. I'm kind of on the fence on this. I didn't mind the Vong in Legends because by that point we already had so many books and comics and stories in general that I was ready for something drastically different, which they were. now that canon has been reset and we have a clean slate, I don't think I'm ready for them yet. I feel like we can go back and tell all these new stories, and I don't want something that drastically different in the new canon now. So I kind of hope that if it ever happens, they'll hold off. Now, they were talking about bringing the Vong in to the Clone Wars in Season 7. Obviously, that never happened. But it's interesting that they were entertaining the idea. So it's definitely not outside of the realm of possibility, but I think that if it does happen, the Force immunity thing is going to be wiped away. That won't be a part of who they are, because Dave Filoni specifically said Grand Admiral Thrawn wouldn't have the Salamiri in Rebels because he didn't like the idea of a Force immune creature. So that's what I think their take on the Vong would be if it ever happens. That's it for patron questions. If you're a patron and you didn't see your question answered here, just go over to Patreon and our weekly Q&A thread, and I left you a written response. If you're not a patron, you can learn more by following the link in the description or in the card. Just $1 a month will get you some extra Star Wars Explained goodies, including a monthly giveaway of a year-long subscription to Smuggler's Bounty, and the combined donations really go a long way in helping support the channel. On to YouTube questions. Webley Studios and a ton of other people the past week or two have asked me if Darth Nihilus is canon because he was just added to the Galaxy of Heroes mobile game. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but no, Darth Nihilus is not canon. I had this same roller coaster of emotion when I saw that HK-47 is in the game, but Lucasfilm has said that game is not canon, so the people that are making the game have free range of any Star Wars character they want to use. They can throw them in there, but their inclusion does not mean that they are canon in the new universe. James Hubbock wants to know what happened to Mandalore after the Clone Wars, and if we might see some Mandalorians in the sequel trilogy. I am actually kind of fearful for them right now, because I think they're going to join up with the Rebels. We're going to see them next week in Star Wars Rebels. I think next week is the next episode. We're going to see them again, and from the look of things, they're going to join up with the Rebellion. So that could mean some bad things for them, because I feel like Thrawn is going to really mess up the Rebels in the season finale. And if the Mandalorians are there to help, a lot of them might get wiped out, and maybe the Empire could exact retribution on Mandalore because of what they did. So I'm thinking that maybe Mandalorians are going to be a rare sight throughout the galaxy during the Galactic Civil War. There just might not be many kicking around after the time of Star Wars Rebels. But obviously, I would love to see some in the sequel trilogy, like with an updated design, like how did their technology evolve? But really, right now, we don't know, except for what was told in like the Ahsoka book at the Siege of Mandalore. I think Rebels is going to answer a lot of questions. Fingers crossed. Zero Cookie Cake asks why Krennic has a different shuttle from every other Imperial officer. And the answer to that is basically that he is a self-important hipster. He has this old shuttle, he has an antique blaster, he just wants to be different and stand out and get noticed. That's really all there is to it. His shuttle is a cry for attention. Screen Ninja wants to know what my favorite deleted scenes are and if I'm glad that any of them got cut. I have to mention the big scene, of course. I talked about it last week. I really like the Moff Jerjerrod scenes in Return of the Jedi. He had like this whole extra subplot where he had a rivalry with Darth Vader, and also the Emperor tells him to turn the super laser on Endor and blow it up, and he has like this internal conflict about doing that. I think those scenes were really cool. I also like the Wampa attack and how they got locked in on Hoth into a room. That's goofy, but ever since I was a kid and hearing about that, I always thought it was funny. Am I glad that any of them got cut? Yeah, I'm kind of glad all of them got cut. When you go and you watch them, they just feel a little off, especially like the big scene. Luke seems like too childish and too wacky, and I mean, as much as I hate to say anything that Biggs had any part in, I think that scene is better served on the cutting room floor. They all would have just slowed the movie down, or like in the case of the Wampa locked in the room that pulls the snowtrooper in, like it just looks goofy. So they were cut for a reason, and I think they should stay cut. And the last question of the day comes from Kulax, and he wrote kind of a softball for me, but it got a lot of upvotes, so I figured I'd answer it. And he wonders where blue milk comes from. It's bantha milk. It comes from banthas on Tatooine, and it's mostly exported from Tatooine, but it is sold everywhere throughout the galaxy. That's all the time for questions I have today. If you want to submit a question for next week's Q&A, just put it in the comments down below, or go sign up on Patreon. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.